Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in the world and the situation in Ukraine, and not just in Ukraine but also in Azerbaijan and Armenia on the 20th of September of 2023. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. As you know, there is a General Assembly in United Nations. I have already returned the icons of NG Duda, the President of Poland, to Poland, Zelensky in Ukraine, Kiev. A lot of things, a lot of bad things happened for the Ukrainians in New York. By the way, as I know, these guys are still there. And we know that there was a very big drama between Poland and Ukraine. And the main reason of that drama is the grain deal, is the Ukraine exports and so on. And that was, and currently, probably this is the most loud, the most important event that took place during the General Assembly. And most of the people over the world, and as I know, a lot of subscribers from Military Summary, pay a lot of attention to this event. And this is exactly what Zelensky needs. This is exactly what Zelensky needs, not just Zelensky, but also the Western countries. And the reason of that is that General Assembly is not the only important event that currently takes place. The most probably important event when talking about Ukraine, of course, is another military meeting in Ramstein. This is much more important for the Ukrainians than just a regular General Assembly, where Zelensky knows here is not able to change anything. But when talking about Ramstein, this is the event where the Western countries can decide and can really affect and make some changes regarding the Ukrainian destiny. And as we can see, according to information we have, the Ukrainians are not going to receive very powerful military aid. To tell the truth, the Ukrainians are not going to receive anything. And this scandal, this drama with the president of Poland has just one purpose: to force the people all over the world, to force the Ukrainians, to force the Russians, to force everybody to pay focus in direction of drama between Poland and Ukraine. And Zelensky just wants not to allow anybody to pay attention to the military aid that Western countries are going to provide Ukrainians as a result of 15 meeting of Ramstein. And as you can see, as you know, according to information we have, the Ukrainians, the Denmark is going to provide Ukrainians 45 tanks, 30 Leopards and 15 upgraded T-72. Norway is going to send them personal carriers like M548. We know that the United States of America is going to provide the Ukrainians Abrams. And this is too small. This is very small. For example, if we want to compare the numbers that Ukrainians are going to receive as a result of the autumn, probably the most important event, and the losses that Ukrainians had during the Ukrainian greatest counter-offensive operation that started in the beginning of June. So if we increased the number of updates, let's say from the 1st of August, we're gonna see a significant number of icons just in this direction. A lot of casualties, a lot of losses, a lot of destroyed armored vehicles, thousands of killed people. For example, the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation reported, if you remember, that as a result of clashes in this area, the Ukrainians lost around 71,000 of soldiers. 71,000 of soldiers, that was the report of Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation. And also the Ukrainians lost 7,600 units, pieces of armored vehicles, tanks, Bradleys, Starkers, Leopards, and many other types of weapon. And now compare with the numbers that Ukrainians are going to receive according to the latest Ramstein. Around 45 tanks, Leopard number 1, and more upgraded to 72, and some unknown, nobody known, like Norway's personal carriers 548. So it's nothing. This military aid that Ukrainians are going to receive as a result of 15 Ramstein is not going to be like offensive military aid that we used to see when talking about, if you remember, last year the Ukrainians were promised to get hundreds of tanks, hundreds of missiles. This is not like offensive military aid. Furthermore, this is not defense military aid, because this is not enough. These 45 tanks is not enough for the Ukrainians to stop the Russians. And I don't know how, I can't even find the words that we can use to describe the entire situation with military aid that Ukrainians are going to receive. Basically, it's just something like, we must do to provide them something, so let's provide them something. Furthermore, today we also got very interesting details, updates from the Ukrainian sources that the Russians completed preparation of the Russian counteroffensive operation, and the British and the United Kingdom intelligence MI6 reported and provided the Ukrainians information that the Russians are going to attack in 3 directions. So they're going to launch attacks in 3 directions, and one of the directions that the Russians chose for upcoming offensive operation, you will be surprised, the Russians are going to counter-attack in direction of Robotyne. And this is a very smart step, this is a very smart solution from the Russian side, because basically the Russians are planning within this year, at least before the next summer, to return control over every single field, over single trenches that located between Robotyne and Verbovo, Novoprokopovka. You may ask yourself, and you may ask military summary, what is the reason, what is the purpose of this operation? Because the trenches there are destroyed. Russians will face the same story as the Ukrainians faced since from June till today. And the thing is that the Russians understand that this war might be endless. This war might be endless, and they need to win the Ukrainians and the Western countries not just on the battlefield. The Russians need to win the Ukrainians and the Western countries not just in the air, in technologies, and many other things. The Russians, first of all, need to win the Ukrainians and the Western countries in their minds, in their heads. They need to create the feeling that everything has no purpose. They need to create it's like psychology war. So if the Russians are able to return the salient before the next summer, then the Ukrainians will be forced to start from the very beginning, and the Ukrainians, they don't have their own production. And anyway, the Ukrainians will be forced to ask Western countries. And Western countries will ask the Ukrainians, what is the purpose? What is the reason to give you weapon if we gave you in the past, you managed to obtain some results, and later you lost everything during the winter. So what is the purpose to give you one more time to begin everything from the beginning? To start everything from the beginning. And this, at least when talking about this direction, we understand that this is a very smart step to win Ukrainians and Western countries in their heads, in their minds, to return everything they lost, and to show the Western countries in the Ukraine that there is no point to attack, there is no point to create barriers, there is no point to support and supply Ukraine with weapons. When talking about 2 other directions, very difficult to understand. We don't have this information. The source that we got this update haven't provided us these updates, but as I understand, the Russians will attack from Belarus, from the north. Let's say not from Belarus, because we can't say whether it would be Belarus or Russia, but the direction will be from the north in direction of Chernihiv area and Sumy area. This is going to be another psychology attack to attack the capital of Ukraine, which will force Zelensky to keep strategical reserves very far from the real combat line in Donbass, Zaporozhye and Kherson. And basically, the Russians will make the same story as Azerbaijani forces managed to implement in Karabakh, in Artsakh. Of course, we can't compare Artsakh and these territories in Azerbaijan-Armenia with Ukraine. It's like differences like 100 times bigger, or even more. But if you are good in small, then you will be able to do everything well in the big. And basically, the Russians realized that the best tactic, the best thing to finish the mission, you need to stretch the forces of your enemy and to attack from different directions. And this is like Naxos. This is the key to win, not to concentrate all your forces to one place. Because if you remember, this battle for Artsakh finished just this morning, today, and the Azerbaijani forces were attacking the Armenian forces from the north, west, from the northeast, from the south, a lot of directions, and basically the Armenian forces and Artsakh forces were able to hold the pressure just for 24 hours, and the story ended. And today they have surrendered. No, of course, it's not correct word to use surrendered, because we're using modern word. The Artsakh took a decision not to surrender but to reintegrate. It's like modern word, and the Ukrainians also are not going to surrender. The Ukrainians, if they're going to, they will will reintegrate into the direction of Russian Federations, like modern world. Of course, the situation with Artsakh have finished, and the only probably negative case, not talking about the casualties among civils, it's always bad. The Russian peacekeepers was an ambush, and as a result of that ambush, the Russian peacekeepers were killed. And the sources have already reported that that was some kind of special operation, but unknown military forces, and with the purpose to involve the Russians in the conflict. While the people in Armenia started making another strike today, and some people are saying that Armenians have already created something like another power in this country with the purpose to dismiss Pashinyan from his position. Now let's return back to Ukraine and let's continue. And now let's talk about the situation on the ground, of course. When talking about Kherson area, we haven't received nothing in comparison with the previous update that we made during this morning of the local time. The only thing we got is the numbers from the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation, and today the Russians reported that as a result of clashes, artillery duels, and many other things, the Ukrainians lost another 60 soldiers. And then we understand that the losses was like the consequences of another wave of Russian air bombings in this area. When talking about the Ukrainian bridgehead in the front of Pridniprovsk, between Pridniprovsk and Pyshenovka, we haven't received more updates regarding Ukrainians who managed to cross the river and landed in this area. I believe that they were destroyed as a result of total infrared system attacks, but maybe they managed to pin down and they managed to dig in deeper in the residential area among these buildings and so on. We need more time to get more information regarding this situation. When talking about Orekhov direction, we have already discussed everything that the Russians are planning to launch counterattack in 3 directions, and this area, Zaporozhye area, is going to be one of the Russian direction. And when talking about the situation, the Ukrainians during the previous 24 hours lost 35 soldiers. It's probably the lowest level of losses since the beginning of Ukraine's greatest counteroffensive operation. The Ukrainians completely changed their state, and currently the Ukrainians try to dig in deeper and to prepare their defense belt before the possible Russian counteroffensive. There were a few attempts to attack Verbova, but if the information regarding the Russian counteroffensive is correct and true, we can forget about any further attempts of the Ukrainian forces to attack in direction of Takmak, Melitopol, in direction of Sea of Azov, because now the Ukrainians need to think how to improve their positions and not to lose this foothold as a result of Russian counteroffensive operation. But when talking about the artillery bombings, drone strikes, we see that the Russians have complete superiority, and during the previous 24 hours we haven't received almost nothing from the Ukrainian side, just one geolocated FPV drone a strike of 82nd Mechanized Brigade against the Russian positions along the tree lines somewhere in the vicinity of Verbova. So as you can see, just one geolocation, and the Russians, as you can see, published at least something around 10 geolocations with different types of attacks against the Ukrainian positions using FAB bombings, rockets, missiles, tanks from hidden positions, artillery systems, mortars, vehicles, machine guns, and so on. Now we are moving to Vremivka tactical bridgeheads. We also haven't received almost nothing from this area. After the Ukrainians were defeated on the line between Novomayorskaya and Novodonetsk, they took a decision to regroup, and they also started digging in deeper because they understand that probably one of possible Russian direction of counteroffensive operation might be Velika Novoselovka, and the Russians also may try to return control over every single settlement in this direction. Of course, this is not so smart in comparison with the situation in Orekhov, because counterattack in direction of Orekhov always have a lot of benefits, because you will force the Ukrainians to step back, and you are able to make them as far as possible from Crimea and so on. When talking about this area obviously have some price for the Russians, but this area is not so priceless as Bradley Square and Zaporozhye direction. The Russians continue bombing and attacking the Ukrainians among the fields, and the Ukrainians also published the video how they managed to discover and destroy the Russian artillery system as a result of FPV drone strike. Now we are moving further to Donetsk direction and South Donetsk direction, and we got very interesting details and very interesting updates. The Russians continue improving their long-range superiority, and probably currently they have established not just like long-range artillery superiority it's not like the same range as HIMARS, but also the Russians managed to get some range that they're very cool at. For example, in this video we see how the Russians managed to discover the Ukrainian artillery system, and as a result of counter-artillery duels that system was destroyed. But this is a regular counter-artillery duel when one artillery system was fighting between another. We're just taking this video for statistics to understand the situation. But very interesting video we got from the settlement by the name of Petropavlovka. As you can see, according to the configuration of icons, this icon is located very far from the combat line. And the Ministry of Defense, for example, of Russian Federation reported that as a result of missile strikes, there were at least 4 missiles, I have counted according to the video, the Russians managed to destroy the Ukrainian headquarters and command center or concentration of Ukrainian forces or temporary Ukrainian positions of 35th mechanized, not mechanized, but Marine Brigade. As you can see, this strike took place very far from the combat line, and there are lots of interesting things, the distance of course, and the drone that was flying above this territory and making a video, and probably was sending this video to some Russian data centers. So interesting situation. If we calculate the distance between let's say this strike, this 35th Ukrainian Marine Brigade position and closest Russian position possible, it's around 45 kilometers. So nothing special, of course. There is nothing special. It's not the first time when the Russians attacked the Ukrainians within a long distance, very long distance. Yesterday we just discussed the Russian Lancet strike against the air base in Kryvyi Rog. But if we increase the number of updates on this territory, let's say from the beginning of August, we will see the real picture. And the real picture is that the Ukrainians do have something like a very big hole in their air defense exactly in this area. I will mark this area with the gray color so you will understand what I'm talking about. As you can see, since the beginning of August, the Russians made significant number of strikes against the Ukrainian positions in this square. And this is basically a heart of a very big tactical direction. The Russians established full control over supply roads, railways, ammo depots, concentration of forces. They're not attacking this territory every single day, but every single week we get another video from the Russian sources how they managed to, let's say, track and to destroy another railway station with some munition in there. We got another video how the Russians discovered another Ukrainian radar or another like station, communication center, and as a result of another strike this station was destroyed. We got another railway station, another Arlan above this territory that was recording the situation, another strike, another explosion. We got another video with destroyed headquarters of 24th Mechanized Brigade somewhere in this area. So a lot of videos we see, and most of these videos are coming from one direction, which can tell us that the Ukrainians do have problems in this area. There is complete absence of air defense. There is complete control of the situation. And this situation surprised me. We see that Ukrainians can't fix this issue, and the Russians intensify their attacks. They develop their technologies, and probably in the future they will show us even a better result in comparison with August. So we see the picture. This is like a fact. This is geolocated videos, not of 2022 or some other war. This is the Ukraine and current days. Now we're moving further. We are moving further to Donetsk. We have passed Toretsk. Very interesting video we got from New York agglomeration. The Russians probably for the first time since this year, since the beginning of this year, published like the first geolocation of very powerful strikes in the settlement. Yet we don't know the purpose of those attacks, what was the Russian goals, targets, and so on. But as you can see, the strike was very heavy, and probably the Russians destroyed another command center or positions of 24th or 28th Mechanized Brigade in this area. When talking about Kupiansk, Klishchiivka, Artyomovsk, Bakhmut direction, there are no changes in this area. Probably the Ukrainians established 80-90% control over this territory, and the rest is in the gray zone. Maybe the Russians have some control, but maybe over 1 or 2 or 3% of this sector, not more. The Ukrainians published another video how they managed to discover the Russian artillery system or radar, and as a result of HIMARS strike, that system was destroyed. So this is Ukrainian things. This is Ukrainian benefits, and we see that Ukrainians continue using HIMARS missiles against, like, I don't know, small artillery systems or just small things, small equipment. They can't bring their artillery systems low range and long range artillery systems like static, not like HIMARS, like M777 howitzers crab to the combat line and to attack the Russians, because the Russians immediately discover them and of course destroy. When talking about Kupiansk and Liman front lines, we don't have any changes in this area. The completely regular situation. The Russian sources published that they managed to destroy another bridge in Kupiansk, but it was very difficult to geolocate it. Maybe that video was old. When talking about the losses, the level of loss in this area is the same as we saw the previous day, so nothing changed in this direction. So, and as you can see, the situation develops not very good for the Ukrainians, and mainly because they haven't received nothing during their 15th Ramstein, and this is a very bad piece of news. The Ukrainians tried to hide this negative situation by making a drama with Poland, but most of the people, of course, believe in that. But specialists and experts like nothing can be hidden from us, especially another Ramstein with very poor results for the Ukrainians. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds you to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes to my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.